Good evening. This is Maestro Cretella with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite modcast. Today we have a 1v1 on Quest Heresy. Our first player today is none other than Maestro Cretella, playing as the Eldar Warlock. The Warlock is a melee hero who also does a bit of spellcasting of his own. You can kind of emphasize just which way you want to go, whether melee or spellcasting, or you can do something in between. Good hero overall, I think. My opponent is, again, Cheddar Bob. This time he went random and managed to get the Hive Tyrant. Of course, before I did post a game of my Sorcerer against his Force Commander, although at that time he had actually picked the Force Commander. So there's another 1v1. I'm not even sure how good it is, because things always look a little bit different, or feel a little bit different when you watch them than when you play them. And I will say this also applies to definitely some of the games that I get. Some of the games that I get are sometimes they're not quite that good, although I imagine they were definitely a lot of fun and exciting when people were playing them. But in the playback, it's actually not it's not as good. But here we go with me playing the Warlock. I've been playing the Warlock lately and definitely been getting comments like, I've never seen you play anything but the Sorcerer. And I actually play Eldar, Space Marines, and Imperial Guard all as secondaries pretty much, but kind of rotates around just based on what I'm feeling. And lately I've really been in a Warlock mood, so I've been playing the Warlock, and it's been going fairly well. Now, let's see. I've gone for double Dire Avengers, and this is something I personally like to do. I don't know. I personally like it, especially if I'm going to be against any kind of melee hero, because I get 2 Dire Avengers. I can have two ranged units that I can focus fire a melee hero with. And Dire Avengers do some pretty nice damage to start out. They only cost 270 requisition. That's more than 270 requisition to put out on the field. That's more than definitely more than Guardsmen, although Guardsmen then do, of course, get that Sergeant upgrade. But just pretty cheap for pretty high range DPS out of the gate, although they are also very fragile to start out. Now, the positioning right here, unfortunately for me, isn't very good. Basically just with my Dire Avengers trying to come through this middle area, and all of these squads being positioned on the sides. And that's especially something that's going to be tricky for dealing with the Hormagaunts, because that will make it much easier for the Hormagaunts to just get into melee. I've gotten a Guardian weapon team out. I feel like a Guardian weapon team is pretty crucial to Eldar Tier 1 play. It's just really good for both what it does in Tier 1 as well as being able to upgrade it into a Bright Lance later on. In general, I feel it's the safer and better option than a Ranger squad in most cases. Of course, there are some times when people will just get both, but overall I feel that the Shuriken has more utility, and of course it does help you scale a little bit better. Alright, right now, the Hive Tyrant, man. Now that's something that's going to be kind of tough, but what the Hive Tyrant did right there, he has upgraded to the extended carapace, and he really charged very, very far. Now here I tried to go for a wipe on this Hive Tyrant, and you know, I was kind of fairly close. Now, there were 2 things there that really prevented me from getting that kill on the Hive Tyrant. First of all, I did not have enough red to use the Swift Movement Global, which is one of the greatest assets of the Warlock. It just increases the speed of every allied unit out on the field, even in team games. So that's really deadly with Banshees. I also hadn't yet chosen an aspect for these Banshees, so they did not have an aspect upgrade. They did not have Fleet of Foot, so I could not pursue as well as if I had Fleet of Foot. Now, I've done fairly well in these early engagements, getting some generator bashes, but Cheddar Bob definitely has an answer for my Guardian weapon team at the moment. As much as I said it can be really good, right now it's actually pretty well countered, even though Cheddar Bob is kind of dragging his feet. He could really just charge the Hive Tyrant in right now, and as long as he doesn't derp on some kind of terrain, although that's definitely a distinct possibility. Ooh, and here's... So right there, the suppression... Now, I went for a grenade there, I actually combined it with suppression, so I got... Wow, I just killed 10 models with a single grenade. Now, of course, part of that had to do that he had them bunched up, but... basically, The suppression from the Guardian weapon team happened as soon as I threw the grenade, so he really took the full hit of that. I think he didn't realize. I don't think he really had time to realize what was going on, because as soon as he got suppressed, the grenade landed right there, and he was just screwed. My Warlock has actually upgraded to the Immolator Blade. This is not a terribly common war gear for the Warlock. I actually feel it's a pretty situational choice for the Warlock, but it can be pretty good against Tyranids, pretty good against the Termagants as well as the Hormagaunts. Here we have a Brood Nest out from Cheddar Bob, and I'm setting up a bunch of energy shields as well. Now, these Dire Avengers, and even for the one that's not behind the energy shield, it is in cover. I do have some Banshees over here fighting some Hormagaunts, and they are going to win that fight, so Cheddar Bob just gets them out of there. Now I'm setting up energy shields, and I feel that's pretty important to good Eldar play. Pretty important. It's just because the Dire Avengers are interesting in that they really, I feel they're not an incredibly cost-effective unit. They're effective, but I feel not cost-effective. And I say that just because compared to other similar units, Shooter Boys, just other Tier 1 ranged units, basically, they definitely bleed a lot for how easily they die. Just the cost. They cost more than other Tier 1 ranged units of comparable endurance or durability. Now, unfortunately, I really made a mistake here. I had my Warlock, and I used Immolate on some Termagants that were just right out in the open, even though I saw the Brood Nest, and I think I just kind of did that by accident. I just kind of reacted a little too fast. I really should have saved my Immolate for the Brood Nest, because that really would have turned the tide of this engagement. As it is, I'm just straight up losing this engagement. And I'm also wondering here, I'm really not as proficient with the Warlock as I am with the Sorcerer, but I was wondering if maybe I should have had my Guardian weapon team doing more early on, because I had it behind my Dire Avengers. Part of what I'm doing by positioning it behind the Dire Avengers is that he has Raveners, so I know there's a possibility he might jump, and I was hoping that my Dire Avengers behind the shield would kind of like be a jump bait. Since he wouldn't be able to shoot and do damage to the Dire Avengers behind the shield, he would jump the Raveners, and then they would jump right into the firing arc of the Shuriken Cannon. He didn't do that. He didn't buy the bait, so I ended up kind of suffering for it. Raveners actually have their Devour upgrade. I'm not sure if this statistic for the Devourers is real, because they don't seem to be that powerful. This would suggest that they are as powerful as Terminators, which, by the way, are getting changed in the next update. I wonder if the next update will already be out by the time I release this cast. But I have my Guardian weapon team set up. Unfortunately, not such great positioning, so I had to move it back a little bit. It was getting shot by all of the ranged units, and then the Hormagaunts were actually outside of the firing arc. Now Cheddar Bob right here, unfortunately, kind of pressed his luck. He was like pretty close. I think it was actually in range of the Brood Nest, because when I was playing the game, I saw the reinforcement sign, basically. That lets you know that you can reinforce. But he was just getting chased down by Banshees, and it really pushed his luck right here. Unfortunately, I really pushed my luck with this Guardian weapon team, and it just got mauled. So both of us lost squads. Now my Dire Avengers are also in a really bad position, so this is unfortunately a much more derpy replay than the game of us playing where it was my Sorcerer against his Force Commander, but I use Immolate on the Brood Nest, and it's actually not quite as effective as I thought it would be. One thing I happen to know is that Dark Flames, just a single use of Dark Flames will take out a Brood Nest. And so I was hoping Immolate would do the same, but I actually had to follow it up with just some melee attacks from the Warlock. I still took it out. He was kind of away from his Brood Nest, but I'm still not doing very well. As you can see, I really don't have the map. I'm getting my generators bashed left and right, whatever that expression means. Just got so many generators bashed. But I've got some Dire Avengers getting tied up, and this Dire Avenger squad right here, I was hoping to throw a grenade, but it was actually still on cooldown from before. Alright, managed to get suppression on the Raveners, and that ends up actually not being too great for me either. Oh, and somehow, I thought they had gotten knocked back. But I mean, I don't have the map at all at this point. I managed to make it to Tier 2 first, and I put out a squad of Warp Spiders. Now, Warp Spiders are really, really a great squad, and I actually was I was really thinking, like, what should I get? Like, basically, at this point I really felt like, man, I'm really not doing well in this game. And I put a little bit of thought into what should I get in Tier 2. And at first I was thinking of getting a Wraith Lord. And I'm not sure if that would have been a better choice, but I think the Warp Spiders are actually a pretty good choice. I've often said that I feel Warp Spiders are a safe and good choice for when you go to Tier 2 for Eldar. Just a fairly safe choice because you get a huge amount of range damage. Warp Spiders, certainly, it gets tough with all of the elite statistics, but I believe out of units that were still in retail, I believe they had the highest range DPS of any squad. Actually, well, ranged Terminators with an Assault Cannon would definitely beat them, but I think ranged Terminators with just Stormbolters would not. But either way, that still just gives you an idea of how incredibly powerful Warp Spiders are in terms of the range damage that they do. I try to return the Generator Bash a little bit. I don't think I'm quite going to equalize it. But I at least try to return the favor, and I do get 2 generators. But the Warp Spiders really are going to help me with a lot of things. First of all, they're going to absolutely shred the Termagants. They're going to bleed a ton of models off the Termagants. That's really going to reduce the effectiveness of the Termagants. And as long as I keep them in cover, hopefully I can tank some of the damage as well. So I throw a grenade. Actually managed to get I managed to knock the Raveners over, but it didn't actually look like they took damage. And I'm just teleporting the Warp Spiders in. And I'm actually might even take out a squad or not. But the Warp Spiders, I was able to really do pretty well in that engagement. I guess I lost ultimately. I did get forced off. But the Warp Spiders just coming back there, flanking and coming right into cover as the surprise did still help me out quite a bit. So the teleporting of the Warp Spiders, that can really help out with flanking, with map control, with just positioning. I'm actually a really big fan of the Dawn of War 2 specific ways of manipulating positioning by using teleportation and jumping, which of course you can't do in Company of Heroes because you couldn't teleport back in World War II. And I just really like using that, especially, of course, I play the Sorcerer, and then most other races do have some kind of teleporting or jump unit as well. Tried to send my Banshees over here to go for a back cap, and I figure they should be able to beat most things 1-to-1. However, not the Hive Tyrant. That's the one thing that those Banshees could not deal with, and that's what was there. So I'm actually running my Banshees away, and I'm actually going to send them over here to get another cap, because I'm feeling the VP pressure right here, and I go for an Autarch. Now, the Autarch is something that I feel... Now, I mentioned before that I was thinking... Oh, and I unfortunately really missed an opportunity there to get those Raveners. I did not even notice that happening. But the Autarch is... I mentioned before that I was considering getting a Wraith Lord. And now that he has this Venom Brood, I'm actually really glad that I didn't get the Wraith Lord. Because I ended up getting an Autarch instead. And I realized at this point, yeah, like, not only am I glad I didn't get the Wraith Lord, but, like, at this point I definitely don't want a Wraith Lord. So instead I get the Autarch, and I already upgrade her to the Executioner Spear, and I think she already has her Energy Shield as well. And this is actually something that I'm a really big proponent of, fully upgrading your Autarch. I know there are some players who would prefer to actually just leave her in her vanilla form, because she can still function in her vanilla form as a tie-up unit. She can just tie things up. Even with her default weapon and without the energy shield. And that can be adequate for the purpose of just tying things up. That being said, I really like to fully upgrade her. It really makes her much more threatening, just in terms of the damage she does. And it also makes her very tanky when you have the energy shield, which can actually be very good for capturing points. Because there are times when you can literally just put the Autarch on a point with the energy shield, and your opponent actually can't do much aside from just let it happen. Of course, they can attack your Autarch, but your Autarch just has so much health with the energy shield that she can usually at least get the decap off, if not the full cap. Right? I mean, right here she was uncontested. And then with that Autarch, she runs at speed 8. No other infantry unit in the game has speed 8. Only vehicles do. I don't know why they gave her speed 8, and it's one of the things about her that I would say is almost frankly too good. And even without using her jump ability, she can really get around the map just by running because she goes at speed 8. So I did manage to wipe a Termagant Brood right there. I've really been hitting the Termagants really hard with the combination of just my Warlock spells. I have Immolate, Destructor, of course, comes by default, and then, well, I mean, then they're pretty weakened, and then I was able to just teleport in with some Warp Spiders and take them out. So now Cheddar Bob actually has his own Hive Tyrant, his hero, on capping duty, but he put his Hive Tyrant in a really bad position. Or rather, I mean, yeah, he did definitely overextend him by going for a back cap with him, and he didn't even have that much health. And of course, I was able to whittle him down by teleporting my Warp Spiders in. And I'm starting to get back into this game. The Warlock, and just another use of Immolate, I used it on the generators, and it actually appears to be horrible against the generators. Well, anyway, the Warlock, just with the actual Immolator blade, though, is doing pretty well against the generators. Just we see the way it's working right there, and he's going to get a generator. So that's going to give him some experience, maybe get him to level 4, hopefully. Yep, gets him to level 4. And suddenly now I'm the one with the map control. Now, I mean, look at the way right now that the Autarch is... just look at the chunks of damage we saw taken out of those warriors, and I really feel that Autarch would not have done that with her starting sword. I actually feel there are actually some cases... that might even be a case where the Autarch might not even win with her starting sword unless she gets a special attack, whereas with the Executioner and the Energy Shield, it's a very, very clear win for her. So here we have Suppression combined with another Immolate. I don't have any other upgrades for my Warlock. In part because, first of all, I see this Carnifex, and I want to deal with the Carnifex. I'm still in Tier 2, and dealing with the Carnifex is not terribly easy. Typically, Tyranids are pretty good at tying up a lot of potential sources of AV, especially things like setup AV that can usually just get one unit over there, whether it's a Hive Tyrant charging in, Raveners jumping in, or just something. They can really just get in there sometimes. Alright. Now here I actually used a Haywire, which is actually another reason why I sometimes say that, ooh, but man, look at what I'm doing to those Venoms. Unfortunately, he really left those in there way too long, and I actually suddenly have the triple cap. But, one of the reasons that the Ore Spiders, again, are a good and fairly safe choice in Tier 2 is that you can get that Haywire Grenade, which, even if it by itself is not enough to deal with a vehicle, you can at least use the Haywire Grenade. If your opponent gets a vehicle, you can use it on the vehicle, and that will at least stall and buy you some time, which is just it's really good. Just usually, I say Warp Spiders are a safe choice because they're really good against infantry, and you're still going to be able to deal with a vehicle a little bit. It's not a choice that's going to set you back when trying to deal with a vehicle or leave you in a bad situation where you wished you had gotten some kind of AV. But, I mean, at this point, part of what's really helping me... Oh! Dire Avengers just got one-shotted with what health they had by that Capillary Tower coming up from the Tyranna formation. But I've pretty much had better control of the VPs for basically definitely for as long as I've had the Autarch out on the field, and maybe for even as long as I've had the Warp Spiders out on the field. So I've really managed to even up the VPs, only 95 to 214 now, before it was like 98 to like 450. That being said, we still got this Carnifex out on the field, and it's upgrading to Thornback, and I still don't really have something adequate to deal with it. Alright, and here's what I'm talking about. I just put the Autarch on the point, and the Hive Tyrant really can't do anything quick enough to stop the decap. Alright. Now here I threw a Haywire on this Carnifex, also did an Eldritch Storm, and unfortunately it does not take out the Carnifex, and I was kind of hoping it would, but I think it was a little misguided on my part. Just the Carnifex with it definitely not having as broad of a frame as a Land Raider Crusader or a Baneblade. A lot of those Eldritch Bolts did miss. And I ended up just spending 500 red and achieving nothing, which is... I hate to do that. Especially, I'm usually more of a conservative and cautious person, so that was really a desperation move right there, and it did not pay off at all. It really didn't do anything. I mean, I'd say the most it did was it just took some health off the Carnifex, which is going to put him off the field, and that is going to buy me some time. It's going to buy me some time to start buying an avatar, as well as get back out on the field to capture things. So maybe it's not even as bad as I think it was. But these Warp Spiders have actually been pretty godly. Level 3 right now, they're really doing well against everything, aside from maybe the Carnifex, but even then, they're what's keeping the Carnifex in check. And right here, again, I'm just having the Autarch capture the point. The Autarch has so much potential, can do so much with map control, just so much potential to improve map control. It's a big part of what put me back in this game. So clearly, just when I made some choices in this game, I really did make great choices, and I usually not one to brag, but I made good choices in this game. But I mean, the Warp Spiders getting levels, the Autarch. Basically, I needed something to help me fight things. I got the Warp Spiders, which were hard countering the Termagants, as well as helping me deal with the Hive Tyrant, which I was otherwise really struggling a lot against. The Hive Tyrant was absolutely destroying me. And not as much now. Cheddar Bob has actually gotten a Lictor out on the field, which he actually needs to be really careful about that against Banshees. Now, I think my Banshees probably are going to have to go, just with all the stuff that is here. But, still need to be really careful. Just teleporting the Warp Spiders around, and I mean, just... they can be very good against melee because of that, although the melee units do finally get in, and I'm probably going to lose a Warp Spider model right here. Hopefully going to teleport them out of there, but here is my avatar. And I wanted to get an avatar. I felt that was something that would really threaten most of Cheddar Bob's stuff, as well as being able to deal with the Carnifex. And there, the Lictor Alpha tried to backcap, and I did a Wailing Doom, although he's still there on the point, so I'm going to need something to get over there and at least stop him. But here we go. There's that Haywire again, and now the Carnifex is helpless while it's taking damage from the Avatar. And this Lictor is also in quite a bit of trouble. The Autarch again here, and I feel this is a big part of the advantage of that Executioner Spear. I don't know if she would have stopped the Cap without that Executioner Spear, and I actually end up winning the game. So it made quite a comeback, and quite amazing, because this was actually definitely a time I felt that I was doing pretty poorly, and I did not see what I was going to do to come back in this game, but I just stayed in, and there's a lot of value of just staying in. One of the disadvantages of having a concede function is that sometimes you will concede prematurely, and I've definitely done it sometimes myself, although, it definitely is the lesser of two evils. You wouldn't want to have this game without a concede function, actually. Alright, enough rambling. Hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.